Hello and welcome to the F-14 Tomcat radio show, straight out of Grumman, Calverton, where all 712 F-14 Tomcats were built. I'm the show's producer. My name's Lorenzo. I want to welcome you guys tonight. As always, we have an amazing show, so let's get to it. Sitting in the front seat is Darrell Leakey, call sign Leakster, Fighting Squadron 102.
Happy to be here.
Sitting in the back seat, putting hack twice by me this year and late again tonight. We demoted him again. So Ensign Eric McMullen, call sign Flanders.
Hey, I'm always about 6 feet behind the pilot, so you know.
And a quick captain's mask. Do you have anything to say for yourself, sir?
I have nothing to say.
Lieutenant Eric McMullen, call sign Scythe, Fighter Squadron 31. He's joined tonight by our maintainer host, and that's Ray Borelli Sr., VF-11 world famous Red Rippers, and also Grumman Plant 6, Grumman Plant 7, building the F-14 Tomcat. He's a Grummanite also.
Thanks. Glad to be here, everybody.
Our maintainer guest, he's first class petty officer, Darrell Mullen, VF-84 Jolly Rogers. Good evening.
Yeah, glad to be here.
This one's special. We're bringing him back. He's a retread from this Christmas show of Fighter Squadron 102 with the Diamondbacks, and that's Captain Skipper Monty Ashilaman, call sign Aswipe, aka Ash, from Fighter Squadron 102, the Diamondbacks. Good evening, you guys.
Good evening. Great to be with some greats there from the Tomcat community. Thank you.
Leakster, Siphon, Ray, take her away.
Woohoo! Well, Darrell, we're really glad to have you with us tonight. I know you've been kind of waiting in the wings for a few months to get on with us, so I apologize for taking that time, but glad to have you with us tonight.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so you started your Tomcat career not the first thing in the Navy, as I understand. You're actually with A7s for a little while. Is that right?
AIMD. Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. So you saw the little bit different side of the fleet than just the fighter community before you got it there with your time at VF-101 in Oceana, right?
Yeah, I went to 101 as for the RAG before moving on to VF-84.
Gotcha.
Is that common for maintenance guys to do that? Do you think they put you in the RAG? It's a training event for you as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I went to VA-174 on the A7 stuff.
Yeah, same with me. I was in
RAG.
101. I was with the Reapers down in Oceana.
Do you guys think that these young guys love to jump in and be part of the F-14 community? Was that a thing at that time, or was it just a lot of guys didn't know the difference between an F-14 and an A7 and just went where they told you, or what was that like?
You went where they told you.
Yeah, I did something a little different. You know, I went to the recruiting station in between 11th and 12th grade and said I wanted to work on Tomcats. I want to be with Tomcats because of my dad and all the history there. And that's what I got. I got just what I asked for. Kind of lucky.
Yeah, see, I just wanted to work on airplanes in general. And when I got my first orders to VA-174, I thought, there we go. A7s, it looks like. And next thing I knew, I was being trained for a bench job at AIMD.
Huh.
So.
When you work on a plane like that, you know, it's very intimidating, kind of disheartening actually, when you're a pilot or an air crew and you walk through the hangar and you see an airplane in about 200 pieces and the engines are over here and the wings are over there, and then a couple days later it's all assembled and ready to go flying, and they say, okay, go for it. What do you guys feel, any trepidation, or do you feel any emotional any feelings when you see guys get in those airplanes that you worked on and take them up? Or I mean, I'm sure there's a good sense of pride afterwards when they bring them back and they're running well. I mean, what's that like?
See, at AIMD, we're working on the actual boxes that come out. When the O-level guys at the squadron pull the box, they send it to us over at AIMD, and we do the repair the box down to the component.
Right, right. I understand that portion. You're basically doing the nitty-gritty work on the computers when you're at AIMD. Is
Yeah.
that the kind of work you're doing at VF-84, or what was
No,
that like?
when I was at VF-84, that was O level. That was actually working hands-on on the bird.
Right. So when you put something together and then a guy jumps in on an aircraft carrier and launches off that catapult, that's your work going flying.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was more impressive, Leekster, when we did the 210 day, when we were, dropping gear and doing so much. But yeah, absolutely, you had that sense of accomplishment and responsibility. As I'll say it, as a youngster, it was powerful. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, you got people's lives in your hands.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's what's always impressed me about the military in general, but being a part of that in a squadron, and I'm sure Aswipe can talk to this as a squadron commander. I mean, when you look around and you see a bunch of guys that just finished a school, they just finished training, and it sets in even more the older you get, to be honest with you. I mean, I've been an airline pilot for almost 30 years now, but when I think about how inexperienced all of us were, from the plane captains all the way to even the department heads and squadron commanders, your level of experience in aviation, you're still pretty young and inexperienced and doing a lot of things you've never done before. And then somehow we managed to pull it off. And the way the military goes through those training cycles and gets people up to speed and makes an airplane like that go off the front end and actually execute a mission just blows my mind sometimes when I think about it.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, the shops, they were pretty much tiered. You had your new guys that, it was their first tour. Then you had other guys that's done several tours that, were taking everybody under their wing and making sure they did what they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
So when you come to a squadron like VF-84, that squadron is like famous. It's famous in the media, of course, because it was in the movie The Final Countdown and all that, that was the Top Gun of the guys from my age.
Yeah.
Top Gun didn't exist, and growing up, The Final Countdown was kind of our Top Gun. To see these cool jets flying around, the photography was amazing. And you come to that squadron with the history and the cool tales and all that. I mean, did you know what kind of history you're becoming a part of? Did they educate you on that? Was there any hazing? What does that look like when you come in there?
Yeah, I kind of really got there blind, I have to tell you that the first time I seen one of the airplanes, I literally kissed it. I was so anxious that I finally got to be in the squadron and get to actually work on an airplane. That was my goal from the day one, was to be hands-on. And then I was given this gift to go to that, as you say, the famous VF-84.
Yeah. I tell you, Leeks, you're talking about something that just brought something to my mind real quick, if I may, is, Darrell and I have kind of similar entry level upbringings in location and where we were and all that. But, as you talk about an 18, 19-year-old plane captain that's, going through the series of checks, looking up at the pilot, giving them the orders, pulling pins, all that responsibility, the ejection seat, I can go on, right? And you salute that air crew and off they go, and you kind of look down and it's like a woohoo, and it was, but as a second mech coming up to a plane captain, boy, you did everything you could, meaning all the studying, the perfection, drills that we did to make sure you were a plane captain. And yes, there was hazing, but I think the fuel was to like Siphon was saying, the Navy's organization of their training cycles, or you were saying, but it's pretty simple but way effective the way they did that. And you just strive to be you wanted to be not a second mech. You wanted to be a plane captain. You wanted your name on that plane. And it was just a lot of, like, I don't know, satisfaction, ego even. But it was cool. And I think that's what drove the excellence. That's what drove the, being very particular and doing those seat trills with all those pins with your eyes closed and making sure you never made a mistake. I mean, it was just such that high level that you just strive to be right on the edge of. It was cool. Taught me a lot.
Darrell, I'm wondering, like, so sorry, my internet sucks apparently, so I'm back. So I'm wondering, when I'm looking, so I was an AVARM Divo, Aviation Armament Divo, which means I was in charge of the AEs and the ATs and all those guys. And when I'm looking out, through my canopy down to the guy over here, who was one of the guys I lead, and I knew these guys, and lots of them, like you said, were 18, 19, 20 years old. I'm like, I am asking this guy to fix a multi-million-dollar airplane so that we can go do what we need to do. Do you remember any specific air crew that you particularly bonded well with, or like had a particular good experience with?
Lieutenant King. I remember him very well. He loved to fly. He really, really loved to fly. He was the type, if it had one engine running and the tires were pumped up, he'd take it.
Unfortunately, he didn't look like a fighter pilot.
But yeah, he was one of the examples. Lieutenant Dillingham, I remember him well. He was a backseater. He was a Rio. Unfortunately, I found out later on that he was lost in a F-14 accident.
Oh, wow.
But yeah,
that was Fred Dillingham.
Yep.
And he was lost in an F-14 off the coast of Virginia. They were doing a supersonic run, and the airplane came apart about 100 miles offshore, maybe about 60 to 100 miles offshore, and they really didn't find much of that airplane, unfortunately. But that was a shocking loss for all of us on the East Coast.
Yeah, I was stationed in NAS Memphis, aka Millington, at the time, and one of my daily duties was to read the message board, and that was a message that I really didn't care to read that day.
Yeah, sure.
Seriously.
That was whose airplane was that, though? Do you know? Was that because
No, I don't know whose that was. I had left Oceania probably close to 2 years.
Because I think he was at the wing or something at that time. Anyways, it doesn't matter whose airplane they were flying. I mean, it does matter to some people, but I don't want to bog down on that. I can't remember. There was something. I think those guys were borrowing that airplane or something. I don't remember the details, but I just know that when it happened, it was shocking to everybody, because that's pretty unpleasant when you think about an airplane just coming apart at supersonic speeds. I think they figured out that it had a tuck under too, with the actuator blew out, and I think it was like a negative 30 or 50 Gs or something instantly. It was pretty bad.
So it was a hide problem. Is that one of those ones who was a hide problem?
I don't remember. For some reason, I think it was an A, and not the B's where it was burning through. But it was a similar type of scenario where they had a stab hard over, but it hard over nose down.
Yeah. Ouch.
So
Darrell, so you did have some guys that you kind of remember specifically as they were standout. Was that because of like how they treated you, or because of like just their love for flying, or what made that stand out for you?
Kind of probably a little bit of both. They were the ones that, they would poke their head in the shop and, kind of bonded a little bit with the guys, and they didn't always just stay up in the ready room or in the paraloft,
Yeah.
The comfort spaces for aircrew.
We used to get, once in a while, we'd get an officer even help us wash a plane. It was rare, but it was cool though. It was the ultimate bonding on the wash rack. So
yeah, I don't remember the guy's name, but we were on the Roosevelt at the time. He was our Divo, and he popped in the shop for a quick sneaky smoke break.
In the shop.
Yeah, in the shop. Yeah, don't tell on me.
That's funny. Yeah. So you guys, you were on the Roosevelt for Desert Storm, and at that time, the Roosevelt was a pretty nice new ship. And what when you guys pulled out at the end of December of 1990, if I remember right, and
that's correct.
what was that like leaving to go to war? Was that were a lot of guys everybody was kind of speculating if it was really even going to happen at that time? Seemed a bit surreal, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they actually pulled us early because we weren't. I don't think we were supposed to leave until like mid-January. So it was like, pack your bags, we're leaving now, type thing. So yeah, we kind of got a feeling that it was going to happen, because I remember coming home one evening and told the wife, let's celebrate Christmas a little early this year, because I'm probably not going to be here.
Yeah,
Right.
Yep.
yeah.
So you guys hustled over to the. Were you guys in the Red Sea initially?
No, we cut straight over. We went.
And you were in the Persian Gulf then on that side? I can't remember.
Yeah, we come
Probably.
on through.
The Suez Canal, and then you guys were working away on those airplanes, getting them ready. There you
Nice.
go, Suez Canal.
Yep, that did the ditch. Yeah, we buzzed straight through. We didn't stop anywhere in the mid. We just balls to the wall, straight to the Gulf.
You know, Darrell, I did two deployments later on Roosevelt, actually. My first one was in '99, and I was actually working on airplanes back then. And they still had the paper copy airplanes from that deployment that you were on, the 90-91 deployment.
Yeah.
And I remember studying those, not studying, but pulling those out and just like poring over them and seeing like what an amazing amount of work that was. You guys did some amazing work. It was a pretty heavy schedule.
Yeah, we went hard and heavy for a long time.
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of civilian support on that deployment?
I don't recall any.
You know, on our ship, I actually got kicked out of my rack. I had to give up my rack to somebody. I can't remember who, but we had so many civilians on board, you know, that were experts on different pieces of equipment. And there was more people on that ship, I think, than had been on it since Vietnam. And it was because they were trying to get those airplanes all up to speed and have every single airplane at 100%. It was very impressive, the parts availability and the amount of work that went into getting everything working.
Wow.
That was my impression.
Yeah.
At the same 91 time frame.
Yeah, I was on the USS America. We left CAG-1. We left the same day as the Roosevelt, about an hour after them. They pushed, and we sailed out right behind them out of Norfolk and went straight over.
Wow. I'm almost surprised there wasn't enough tugs to make that work.
It was kind of interesting because I had two guys. I had one guy from my RAG class on my ship, and another guy that I knew from my RAG class, or two guys were on the Roosevelt. And we were all out, you know, drinking together, knowing that we were going to ship out the next morning. We were also junior. We were going to have to walk on the ship. Of course, we weren't going to get to fly out in our glorious F-14s. We were all new guys. So, yeah. And it was very interesting to see two carriers going out the same day.
Yeah.
You would have thought that would have got Saddam's attention, but apparently it didn't.
No.
He's the next Nebuchadnezzar. So what was he paying attention? He didn't care.
True.
Wow.
Yeah.
True story.
So you have so Darrell, you guys did you lose an airplane? I believe you may have lost one aircraft while you were in the squadron. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that was in, I want to say it was 91 or 92. We had I remember it was Lieutenant Francis. I don't remember the other air crew, but yeah, they'd went out for routine training flight, whatever, out off the coast of Oceania. And didn't come back.
What year was that?
Yeah, I want to say it was 91 or 92.
91, 92. Okay.
The bureau number was 162702. It was aircraft 201. It was one of our showbirds.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
I remember,
they didn't come back either, or just the jet?
no, the aircrew was fine. Aircrew was fine.
Oh.
Just lost the aircraft.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, I was actually up in the ready room when the other aircraft from our squadron called back and said 201 was in the water.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
So do you remember what the cause of the accident was?
I don't think I ever heard. It seemed like probably a week went by and there was a couple of chunks on a pallet out in the hangar bay. That was it.
I like the way you put that. A couple chunks of it.
Yeah, there wasn't much. There was enough of it that you could see, our paint scheme. Basically, that was about. You could tell it was one of ours.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Probably the only thing left was the box.
Yeah, there wasn't.
Right.
Yeah, whatever was
Well, they
floating.
might
on
not have
top.
found that. Who knows?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, but I remember that because I went down to maintenance control and told them and of course the maintenance chief immediately called out everybody do a full tool count, full inventory, and then
Of course.
one of the maintenance chiefs turned around and put his hands on his hips and he said, "Son of a, that was our best bird."
Yeah, the maintenance chiefs were always the same personality. We had a guy by the name of Master Chief Ramsey, and this guy, deep woods of Arkansas, did not take any crap from nobody, nothing at all. But they were all the same. I mean, I remember just meeting them, and they were always these very harsh, strong gentlemen that just got stuff done. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So when you were there for about 5 years at 84, you started what was an E3 there?
No, actually, I got there as a E5.
As an E5. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So you were already kind of an assistant, at least a shop lead or something like that.
Yeah, I'd been a shift supervisor. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And did you end up getting your LPO kind of thing there out while you were there too?
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, good deal.
Yeah.
What did you find that challenging versus? I mean, did you have enough interaction with other squadrons? I don't know. Leaks, did they deploy with a sister squadron?
Yeah, VF-41.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when do you have enough interaction with other squadrons to kind of be able to compare and contrast your experience as an LPO in the Tomcat squadron versus LPO in another, Brand X kind of aircraft?
I mean, yeah, with our sister squadron, you're constantly back and forth. You're borrowing tools and swapping stuff around. Yeah, and my roommate was actually a mech in VF-41.
Mm-hmm.
So
how about the other type models? Yeah, how about like comparing your experience as an LPO with the A6 squadron or the Prowler squadron or whatever? Yeah.
VA-174, no comparison. I think the F-14 community had a total mindset to them. It was we're the tip of the sword. We're here to do business, and we're going to do it right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was very professional, but the camaraderie was unequaled. I would say.
I think a lot of us have that same feeling about that. How do you think that this Navy experience have treated you for future stuff, the things that you've done in your life? I mean, how do you feel about that? What the Navy's done for you? I don't mean this as a recruiter commercial either. I'm just curious.
I wouldn't be anywhere near where I'm at now if I hadn't if I hadn't did my 12 years in the Navy. You know, there's no doubt. Yeah, it's just the training and the respect and the just the values that you get. You know, you show up on work on time, you get the job done.
Yep.
You're not watching the clock. It's task oriented. This airplane's got to be fixed today, you know? And
Yep.
so if that was 8 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning when he got it done, it is what it is, you know? So that can do,
Well,
will do.
I got two things I want to ask you about as a Rio. So I never flew the OG-9. I never flew the A or B model. I only flew the D model. So I don't really know. I understand the transmitter for the OG-9 was pretty heavy, 300 pounds from what I understand, right?
Yeah, that was a joy. You always look forward to replacing those.
Let's get 3 of your closest friends and take this thing out.
Well, actually, no, 2, because
2, okay, yeah, that's my 3.
Where it was at in the nose of the airplane, you had to stand side by side. There wasn't room for 3 people. So me, I'm only 5'7", and I would literally be on my tippy toes trying to catch 300 pounds coming out of the nose of this airplane.
Oh my God.
And when you're taking it out was the easy part. It was the putting it back in, because you had to line up the rails and stand on your tippy toes, trying to hold 300 pounds up in the air and line it up with a rail to slide it back in was not fun.
Well, you know, if it was the Air Force, they'd have a special tool just for doing that one slide thing, and each squadron would have.
It would be a special crane.
Yeah, they would have had a lift and all that.
Yeah.
It made you better for it, right?
Yeah.
Well, they made that OG-9 out of solid gold and unobtainium, so you know it was heavy.
Yeah.
But once it was plugged in, you know, the anti-gravity devices inside it made it a lot lighter for when you were flying. I think that's what I was told.
Yeah, but it was oil cooled too, so it was filled with oil.
Well,
that's true.
Yeah.
The jets that were being taken to the boneyard, which is, you know, fast forwarding to a few years later, but the ones who were taking the boneyard were taking the OG-9 radars out for they're still the operational squadrons. They had to put lead plates up there because it would
balance
the blade, unbalanced jet. Yeah,
I believe it. I believe it.
So okay, tell me about the 081 and the 083 box. What I don't even.
081.
Not an OG-9 babies.
Yeah, they're part of the 2 of the computer boxes, the 081 and 083. Those were probably the boxes we probably changed 95% of the time. That, you know, it came back if it was having problems, and usually the Rio, he could run his onboard self-test and it would spit out 081 or whatever, and no sooner he get out of the wires, we'd already be signaling back and forth, you know, 81. So we already knew what to run to the flight deck, pull, and go grab.
Light catchers.
I got you.
Yep.
Yeah. God, those boxes now, it's probably all that stuff can fit inside a cell phone now. It's amazing.
Oh, easy. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
boxes,
they were
probably a foot by a foot, and probably,
I know,
2 feet deep, 2.5 feet deep.
Yeah,
and
I know.
they weren't light either.
No, haze gray with 2 handles on each side.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah. Amazing.
Well, what else? You got anything else you want to share with us? Stories from your glorious fleet days? Tattoos, illegitimate children.
No. Probably
time.
Probably on the Roosevelt during the first cruise, inaugural cruise. We got in trouble. We kept boning people.
Oh boy.
The squadron insignia.
Yep. No, I know.
We would catch some snipe black shoe running around the ship late at night, and he would end up getting tackled. Shirt pulled up over his head, spray painted a skull and crossbones. Pull pull the shirt back down over the wet paint and start giving them a pink belly.
Nice.
Yeah. And of course, it didn't take too long over the 1MC. We got a strong message from the Admiral because apparently we had got a family member of his one night. So it's like, gentlemen, this needs to stop.
A family member? That's weird.
Yeah. It was some relative of his. I don't know if it was some nephew or.
Was it his wife?
No. No, we weren't fortunate enough to have females on the ship at that time.
That's right. We didn't have any of those.
No, me either.
Wow. So you guys would grab somebody unsuspecting person that was minding their own business, going to mid-rats, and suddenly they would be blindfolded and then spray painted with the skull and crossbones and sent on their way.
That's exactly right.
Never heard of
That's a beautiful thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that was great.
All right. Well, I don't think they're doing that too much in the Navy anymore.
No,
that'd be my guess.
No.
That's fantastic.
Well, thanks for being with us, Darrell. We would love to have you chip in some thoughts as we're talking to Aswipe here a little bit, but we appreciate your time tonight.
Oh, I appreciate it. My pleasure.
Yeah, it was really cool. Similar era during the times,
awesome.
different places. So it was cool to have you, Darrell. Thank you for everything.
Yeah.
Well, Aswipe, welcome back.
Thanks, brother.
Skipper.
We're,
You want me to tell you about myself?
We could probably use the long version of the bio this time. I'm joking.
Yeah, you've had quite a career there, Monty. So tell us I forgot where your commission was from.
So commissioned from the U.S. Naval Academy, class of 90.
Okay. And then you rolled to Pensacola and you went to, how did that work? How long did you have off before you started flying?
So I probably just the summer, started, in late July, August, starting flight school there in the summer of 90. And then in early 92, so after about a year and a half-ish, went up to the Grim Reapers of VF-101, and that's where I joined the big fighter community.
Was that your intention to be in the F-14 community or what were you shooting for? What was on your mind when you got into aviation?
Tomcats, period. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you participate in any kind of MIDI thing? I know at the Academy, they do some midshipman summer. Sometimes they get to do some aviation things or go on a submarine, things like that. Did you do some of that stuff?
So unfortunately, I did not. Bad Fred Lewis was the Commodore at the time. And I don't even remember how I ran across him as a midshipman. Maybe it was through the Arney family somehow. And he wanted me to come down there, and I got orders, if you will, to do something else. And then I did plebe summer detail 2 summers while I was there, so that kind of took away some of the training you would get. But I was passionate. Probably the only thing or the only aspect where I thought for a second, and I don't know, Raymond, maybe you know him, Lieutenant Fasinelli, Face, who was an instructor down at VT-86, and he was a pretty tall.
I know Face.
Yeah, okay.
I remember Face, yeah.
As a brand new student going through flight school, he was extremely intimidating. And I had my first FA.
He was still there when I got there the first time.
I had my first fighter simulator, if you will, running intercepts. I thought I was prepared. We hit start, and about 5 seconds later, he turned to me and he goes, "Do you think you have what it takes to be in the Tomcat community?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "I beg to differ." And he stood up and walked away. And that was literally after 5 seconds in the simulator. I mean, we had just hit run. To this day, I think he had an appointment, a hot date, or something that he had to get to, and used me as an excuse. Because I had him the next day. I started the exact same way, and it was great. I think it was one of my little message. If you're going to be in this community,
did you mess up your reciprocal or something like that?
What's that?
Did you mess up your reciprocal or something like that?
What's the reset?
Okay, you're on a 010. Yeah, 190. Wait, huh?
Oh,
Wow.
Wow. Well, that's
Yeah.
that's kind of how it was back then too. There was a lot more of that level of hazing, especially at the RAG. I don't know, what your experience was as a JO at the RAG, but when I went through, you had your instructors that were really kind and nice guys and all that, but you had a group of instructors too that felt like it was their duty to kind of make your life difficult, to see if you had the stamina, mental fortitude to make
Yeah.
it through the training without breaking down and giving up or crying or whatever. But by the time you get to the Grim Reapers, you're not leaving. In my opinion, I wasn't leaving. You know what I mean? They're going to have to drag me out of there, right? How was your experience there at 101?
yeah, no, I had a great experience. I mean, I think for the Rio, AdFaz, when we were doing all the jamming stuff, was kind of a little bit of a rite of passage, even though the entire syllabus is. And so, yeah, that was brutal. And as I look back on my career, because sometimes the word hazing, I mean, and I guess appropriately so, kind of is a negative connotation, but the good aspect of it is, hey, when you're doing a certain job that requires a certain mentality and a certain amount of toughness, and maybe it's not for everyone, and it doesn't mean that the people who aren't doing it, aren't good quality people. It just means that, hey, we need to make sure that you're going to fit into this
Yeah.
into this community, right? With
Yeah.
maintainers, like one of them, for example, when I fast forward a little bit to VF-102, as you know, Master Chief Keith Holbert, who's kind of like, I always look at as the maintenance master chief of the Tomcat community. And yet when I look back on my career, all of those things, to include day one in front of the ready room, when they ask you to talk about yourself, and Leakster was probably one of the ones in there yelling at me. I didn't realize they were joking that they were serious when they said sit down.
So tell us about yourself.
Exactly. So I kind of laughed, and then I went on to continue talking about myself, and then it got ugly. But
it's pretty unforgiving.
But I look back at everything, whether it's plebe summer, whether it's as the FNG, in the squad.
Yeah.
There's a reason for everything, because
Yeah.
individuals that you've got to be able to count on in every situation and every second, because lives and critical missions are in the balance, and you just can't.
Yeah. You said that very eloquently. We had some initiation hazing in VF-11 at Oceana, and it was, I won't go into detail, but I never heard it quite like you said it. It was really a test to be able to have each other's back and to get the job done. I never heard it quite like that. So thank you for that. That shed some ideas in my head. So thanks. That was good.
Of course.
So, I was thinking, Ash, that earlier when we were talking, when Darrell was talking about, what it's like to be a new guy, and I started talking about those plane captains, and you see the effort that goes on the flight deck, and these young folks, the way they're just busting their behinds, especially those yellow shirts on the flight deck. I mean, and our own guys, trying to get these jets off the deck just blew my mind back in those days. But that's when I was a JO, and you're just basically trying to not mess you're trying to do your stuff right too, because you're a new guy as well. I imagine that as a squadron commander, when you're a squadron commander, you must have had a completely different sense of that whole thing, and a much higher level of pride when you look out at these young folks, right? When you had more maturity.
I mean, there certainly are, maybe, bigger responsibilities, whether that be in number and scope. But I'll tell you, in all honesty, with, a skipper like Don Barbary, Pirate, flying with you for the first time, as a junior officer in the squadron, with the maintenance master chief like Keith Holbert, I was really, I knew it at the time, but certainly looking back, I was very blessed to, on day one in the fleet, to have those kind of people around me to kind of mold and shape me on how to be an air crew. how to be a maintainer. And by that, I don't mean fix it, but hey, I need to send back the Sierra codes. I need to run fly quetchers. I need to let people like Darrell know, because those precious few minutes that we know we get on the flight deck,
Yeah.
fix an airplane or not, that can make a world of difference. And so I would say at least 90+% of my philosophies came from, that group. Or fast forwarding to VF-14, where I did my training officer and department head tour, and you had, our maintenance master chiefs like Johnny Simmons and guys like Slammer Richardson. So the exact same kind of culture. And so throughout my entire career, so by the time I got to being a skipper, and oh, by the way, Sean Blackwelder was we had a maintenance senior chief. We didn't have a maintenance master chief, but just like Keith Holbert took him everywhere, because he was a young third class, I believe, in 102 with us in VF-102. But when Keith Holbert was taken to VF-213 when they were having some issues, and then he was taken to VF-154, he brought Sean Blackwelder with him. So he was my maintenance senior chief out in Japan. And so I was able to put into place with some of the same people and just continue practicing the same philosophies, have the same culture. And so you would look out and really reflect back to day one in my fleet or my Navy career and practice with the same kind of people and the same kind of thing. So it was either exactly right or exactly wrong. And of course, I mean, it was exactly right. So I look back out with pride, but pride of places I had been. And, a few things that some of you guys have mentioned here in this discussion, and I've always looked back throughout my career, whenever you hear of a command having some kind of massive personnel issue or a mishap, and I look back at 102, and I'm like, I've never been in a command that's had those kind of issues. And yet it all goes back to that culture, whether it's the skipper and XO, the CMC, the maintenance master chief, and the chief's mess, the wardroom, what is the interaction you have with the LPOs. And it was just that camaraderie and teamwork that we all relied on one another. There wasn't, well, this is us and you are them, or we do this, you do that. I mean, it was a team coming together, and that was what I experienced. And then I was able to, as a skipper, just push play and keep all that type of philosophy and culture going. And
I think that's pretty much what you're doing for a living now, in your job, right? In your civilian job these days, is trying to quantify what makes that cultural magic, and how do you plug that into an organization to get the most out of it, right? With what you have.
100%. Yeah, working with CAVU International, which, as you would expect, stands for Ceiling and Visibility Unlimited. And we're just trying to make our clients perfect day. And it's using everything. I just look at it every day. I reach back and I pull an arrow out of my quiver. I pull the lead by example arrow out. I pull the debrief arrow out. I pull the lesson learned arrow out and put it back into the plan and brief. And, crew resource management and human factors. And how do you really take care of your people, right? Because knowing your people is not just their name. Why are they acting differently, or what's going on maybe in somebody's personal life? So, and you bring that to other high risk industry.
So that when we were talking about the amazing thing that the Navy does when they take a high school graduate, somebody who's 18, 19 years old, a recent college graduate who, let's face it, in college you learn a little bit of academics and some leadership. You guys were lucky at the academy that you may have gotten some leadership training. I came off the street as an AOCS guy and had extremely limited leadership training. You take a guy like a person like that, male or female, and you stick them into this training cycle in the Navy, where you take an 18, 19-year-old, you train them for a year as an air crew, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years, and then you're out there executing for 2 to 3 years. And right about the time you get good at what you're doing, they pull you out of that job and stick you into another job that you have no idea what you're doing, and you start all over again. And they do that cycle continuously on an aircraft carrier, say every 18-month cycle. I think the ship's company, they trade out about 50% of ship's company every 18-month cycle. So you've got a constant evolution of a constant group of people coming in that don't know what they're doing and being trained up. And I think that you're taking that, what we call an OODA loop, that whole how we operate tactically, basically how we do anything, by analyzing and acting, and this this system that we use is so tight that by the time you're at a squadron commander level or where you're at, Monty, I think you kind of have that whole thing solidified in your brain where you can actually teach it the macro picture. Is that right?
Yeah, no, 100%, because all of us on this know, right, whether you're a maintainer or an aircrew, is that it's not just the skipper that's flying all the missions, right? It's not just the maintenance master chief or the khakis that are fixing airplanes. And we'll have brand new guys. Now, don't get to name a conflict. However, after a few days, we need the entire team. So we kind of train everybody from day one. And just like today, there will be aircrew going off in an aircraft with whatever ordnance going on whatever mission, and kind of alone and unafraid, as we say, and heading off to do whatever the work is. And they don't have squadron leadership, air wing leadership, aircraft carrier leadership, Navy leadership sitting there with them. And yet a lot of high risk industry will just take individuals and say like, well, I've got 30, 35 years of experience. I don't need to debrief. And yet you're like, but you've got people that are in week number one on the job, and they can also fail, and they can also cause tragedy if they fail.
And they can also learn from you, because you're the guy that knows how to do this. So share your lessons learned.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's interesting when you go to whatever client it is, right? Farm equipment manufacturing, oil and gas, law enforcement, fire department. Every now and then you'll see that, okay, they looked at your bio. They're really interested to meet you. They really love the handshake. And then you can see this look in their eye like, I don't know if this dude knows that we don't have aircraft carriers here.
Right.
And yet within minutes, because of our experiences and then how you can relate it to their industry, because we don't teach them anything about their industry. I don't teach them how to drill for oil and gas. I don't teach them how to make farm equipment. It's just that process that we go through, in the Department of Defense and certainly within naval aviation, where, hey, do you wonder why you're making the same mistake every day? Why don't we debrief it? And then maybe Monty doesn't forget the tool in the morning, or Monty doesn't whatever. And that doesn't mean that it was always easy, in naval aviation. You're on month 5 of deployment, you're doing the air intercept control, max conserve out there, and it's midnight and you just want to go to mid-rats. Let's just take a few minutes and get better, just a little bit better each and every day. And that's how we really get good within naval aviation.
I was blown away by, something about the Navy that when they trained us as aviators was that you were trained from day one that you were going to get shot off of this ship. And once you were off the front end of the boat and you're in this jet flying around in the dark, you're it. There's nobody else that's going to save you. You can call people and ask for help on the radio all day long, and it ain't going to matter. You are it. You have to make good decisions. You have to follow procedures. You have to have good situational awareness. You have to stay on top of everything, your fuel state, where you are over the ground, how high over the ground you are, where the mountains are, where they aren't, where the bad guys might be, what possible international lines that you don't want to cross, what radio frequencies that you don't want to jam up, how not to look stupid. You don't want to embarrass yourself above everything else and have everybody make a joke and you get a new call sign, all those things, so.
Well, it's funny you say that, because, one of the things that they always kind of tease aviators about is, hey, it's better to die than to look stupid. Which I think as we all sit here, you'd be like, oh, no, of course it's not more important to die. And yet when you look at sometimes decisions you made, you're like, you clearly made the decision that the risk of dying was better than the risk of looking stupid.
Sure.
But, honestly, I would say to set the tone accurately, or to describe the tone accurately, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, but having that level of perfection was actually to the expectation of a high level of performance and excellence was what set the community above. I don't want to disparage my flight school classmates that went to other communities, but that continual holding to a higher bar and a higher bar and a higher bar, so that even if you were looking bad, that meant you were probably underperforming.
Yeah.
So you see that?
That's what I was getting about earlier. That's what gave you that, the surprisingly 18, 19-year-old kid launching a Tomcat or responsible for a Tomcat, and having that sense of being that next step and having that perfection. And you said it probably better than I did, but that's exactly what I was meaning earlier. It was just an environment. It was just super cool.
And that debrief and, going over the lessons learned and that nature, that happened at the shop level as well. You had the new guy that went out to work on a problem on the plane. This guy's seen that same exact problem 20 times. You get that guiding, the sharing of the knowledge,
Well, yeah. And I've talked to some over my career. I mean, not many, but there are some people that might think that, well, you're focused down in the weeds. You're not really focused on the big picture, right? And yet what I was taught, starting with Pirate, is if you're doing that level of detail so good, then everything else you're doing is just absolutely eye-watering. And I'll tell you, and I won't use squadron names because I don't want to disparage any, but I remember going out to the flight line and grabbing some of the other air crew that were around me, and we were looking at our squadron flight line, and we were looking at another squadron's flight line. And I said, if you just looked at these two, lines, i.e. the pointy noses, which one of these squadrons would you guess has their act together, and which one of these do not? And there was one of the squadrons, i.e. 102, that it was like a razor line down the line. I mean, just perfect, which meant that the plane captain was doing his or her job to perfection. The pilot's doing his or her job to perfection, paying attention to each other and working together as a team. And something that was important to me when I got to 102, whether it's plane captains on the nose wheel door or air crew on the canopy, my policy was your name is on a jet before your feet touch down in Narita Airport, Japan, and they will not come off a jet until your feet are off the ground leaving Narita Airport going back to the States. And we made that happen. When you would watch youngsters, whether they were young enlisted or brand new air crew, show up, wondering where the heck they are in this place called Japan and what are they doing? And they go to drop their stuff off at the squadron and their name's already on an aircraft. Wow, you want to talk about camaraderie and feeling like a part of a team.
Yeah.
And I got to give a shout out to guys like Keith Holbert and Hooch Dalator early on, that would set the tone. Again, I won't mention the air crew. It was not me, but I was standing next to a Rio on one of my first flights, and we were debriefing maintenance control. And that Rio just looked at maintenance, and it was Master Chief Holbert, and said, "The radar doesn't work." And he turned around and walked away. And I won't repeat what Master Chief Holbert yelled at him, but it was basically get back here and give a debrief. And there were times that you were doing nothing but working for maintenance in the air to give them the best opportunity to fix that jet for the next go.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely, man.
Yep.
Absolutely. And then sometimes you were working for them too, because there's a misnomer in the civilian world that military equipment works perfectly all the time and that we see all and know all.
Yeah.
And the truth is, you would get in an airplane sometimes that had some pretty serious issues, and you weren't really sure if you wanted to take that jet flying. Certainly airplanes that were not mission capable. I mean, you knew on the ground, hey, the radar just isn't going to work. And so why are we even bothering? But we needed to get those sorties out, and your wingman had a radar and he could cover. So, you might be off the coast of Iran and you need to get that airplane in the air just to show them that, hey, we're here.
Yeah.
So you went flying, and
And I'll tell you, one of the frustrations that I listened to throughout my career, never in a squadron that I was in, but it's sometime the rap, that the F-14 would get, because when I was in places like VF-102 and in places like VF-14 with the unbelievable maintainers and then the air crew doing their part, I mean, as you know, our jets worked. And if before our 95 cruise, when Pirate was skipper, we had plussed up to a 14 plane squadron when VF-33 decommissioned. And Pirate, Hooch Dalator, as this maintenance master chief, 1 week before we went on deployment, we did a 14 plane flyby Oceana. And basically that was a signal to Oceana that the Diamondbacks and our maintenance department, we're ready with our 14 airplanes. No, we don't deploy for over a week, but we're ready. And it's just the way, it was just the way we did business,
Nice.
So,
Sweet.
we had great airplanes, and I know that our sister squadron quite often were flying with less than stellar machines, and I know that But again, that's a testament to, what everybody did out there. And this is something that I see all the time, because you see these guys, oh, we saw 25 UFOs on the radar, and you're like, well, sometimes the radar shows you 25 false targets, and sometimes the radar doesn't show anything, and there's an airplane right in front of you that you can see. So there were times when the old OG-9 was not everything it was cracked up to be in the books that you read. But then other times, when I took it on deployment over bad guy land, the thing was just working like it's supposed to. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And
Really?
I was pretty thrilled that most of the missiles that I shot in training, I would say all the radar missiles guided to successful hits. And I had one Sidewinder that came off and decided to go 90 degrees and go straight up for some reason. Came right off the rail and went straight up.
Sunseeker.
Yeah, but the bad part is, one guy said to me afterwards, he goes, it's kind of like the kid who takes his bow and arrow and shoots the arrow straight up in the air, and you go, that's pretty cool. And then you figure out, oh, that thing's going to come down somewhere. And then you start running around trying to get away from it. Right?
I was just going to ask you, I mean, did it come down? Like, I mean, did you see it? I mean,
yeah, big sky, little airplane theory. We have no idea where it came down, but it came right off the rail and almost hit the nose. The rocket motor, just did kind of a hard 90 left and then a hard pitch straight up. And I have no idea where it went. But my point is that, these are machines that are worked on by designed and worked on and operated by human beings. And, we're all out there doing our best, but occasionally this stuff doesn't work the way it's supposed to. But when the chips were down, I would say 99% of the time, the airplanes that I flew over in combat situations were great airplanes, working great.
Yeah.
Monty has I do.
Well, and with that culture mentality, another kind of shout out I want to give, and I'll use Ken Skaggs, call sign Boz, who I was crewed up with when I first got there. So yeah, my first 9 months in the fleet, I was newbie. Maintenance, the ready room, or what it is. And Leekster, you've heard me tell this story before. I'm a very optimistic person. So to this day, I still don't know why I made this comment, but Boz and I are standing an alert on the America. I think we probably had the alert 7 from 0400 to 0800. It was approaching 0730. The sun's coming up. It couldn't have been a more picturesque, sitting there with a light breeze coming over the flight deck. Up comes the sun. And for some reason, as a new guy, because I did not feel this way, I always felt blessed. I think I meant that we didn't get to go flying. I don't know, but I said, this sucks. And without jumping out, without literally jumping out of the front seat, Boz, who is a very mild-mannered guy, basically jumped out of the front seat and grabbed me by the throat and was like, hey, new guy, don't ever, ever, ever forget how many millions of people would die to be sitting in that boring seat that you're talking about.
Just sitting there not to go flying, right?
Yeah, and I wanted to say, oh, Boz, I was just joking. I was just trying to be funny, but I didn't. I went into shut up, new guy mode and listen. But I mean, it just taught you to always respect the opportunity that you've been given.
Absolutely.
Respect the people that you're working with, you know what I mean? Because it's precious. And, you talk to Darrell a little bit about, life after the Navy. And, the number of opportunities you have to work with that caliber and dedicated of a professional all around you, there aren't many places that exist,
Yeah, amen.
Lupe, you mentioned something that a little bit I wanted to follow up on. You mentioned that the debrief, like the times that we went flying because the jet just needed to get some maintenance hours, some hours up in the air, essentially to figure out what was wrong with it.
Yeah.
Then you come back and you debrief, you stand there across the desk for maintenance control, and you're like, I've got this page of notes, and I want to sit there and talk. I want to talk to the LPO of this shop and say, here's what I saw, here's what I saw, here's what I saw, here's what I saw. And those were some of the best relationships. I remember really enjoying, like, kind of working head to head with the guys who were going to end up turning the wrenches on it, to say, what can we tell you? What more can we tell you to help help fix this problem? I felt, there were times I really felt like almost like I was an airborne maintainer. I mean, obviously I wasn't doing the work, but I was providing the best information I can. And so I don't know if you guys have seen this. The five of you, I expect, have probably had varying degrees of this as well. For example, just maybe, I don't know, a month or two ago, I had my car in getting some work done on it, and I'm giving them a maintenance control level debrief on what was wrong with my car, and they were like, "Okay, we got it, sir. Shut up."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. We're going to run the code. We got it.
Yeah. As it turned out,
So
they
funny.
didn't have it, and they needed that further information.
There you go.
But nonetheless, that level of professionalism, like, working together. I got this piece, you got this piece, the pilot's got this piece, maintenance control has this piece, and putting that all together to say, we need to get this jet over the beach tomorrow because the other one's going into phase, and so we got to make it happen, that kind of thing.
No, without question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to kind of toss that at you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. It takes all of those pieces to be successful, right? And so for me, and as you know, as a backseater, it was AT1 Russ Bachman, AT1 Rick Fox, or it may have been an AT2, AT Paul Aguirre. But those are the individuals that you got very close with. And oh, by the way, called up and found, and I don't know how I did this in 1996 when I got to the Top Gun staff. Boeing had taken over the contract for the Tomcats that Top Gun still had for a little while. So not a lot of Tomcat expertise. And so I remember calling back to Master Chief Delator, and he goes, "Hey, Rick Fox is managing a Taco Bell somewhere in Kentucky." And I found him, right? And I found him, and he got hired by Boeing. And I found Paul Aguirre, and he got hired by Boeing. And they started turning the Tomcat maintenance around, but they were such rock stars that they got picked up by the F-35 program. But you got to know those guys, and you would work for them airborne, talk to them, and sometimes you'd give them debrief that they probably wondered what you were smoking while you were flying, because you would say something like, "Hey, I went to 20-mile range scale, and then I went to radio preset number 2, and then I wiggled the brightness knob," and they're like, "Those are not related." I'm like, "I'm just saying, if I did that, this system would work." And then they would go through and do that, and then figure out what the connection is, and then actually able to do so. And I found that later in my career, or later in my career, maybe it was because the Tomcat needed it. I don't know, but sometimes those relationships weren't always there, because back to something you said earlier, Leekster, you can take a brand new airplane and destroy it, i.e. it's not FMC quickly, right? It's not just because, hey, it's an old airplane, it doesn't work, and a new airplane doesn't work. Oh no, it can be quite the opposite. And it takes that team, just like you mentioned. So
Seen that over and over again. It's amazing. So tell us, Monty, you ever shoot a Phoenix? Or did you just shoot a Sparrow? What kind of missiles did you ever get to shoot off the F-14? Any?
I got to shoot them all, or be in the airplane with them all. I did shoot the AIM-54 Phoenix, which was kind of neat, because when I went to the Top Gun staff, AIM-54 Phoenix was my subject matter expert, one of my lectures.
Oh, excellent, yeah.
And Scott Raveling of Hoon was, with Test World. And so we got to work together on some scenarios for some shots, and it was really neat. And that's a lot of the F-14, transitioning from just long range, over the horizon Soviet bombers to medium range, short range, to include the AIM-54 transitioning to short range, but then also to the air to ground mission. And the AIM-54 was a major piece into how that entire airplane, aircrew, and maintainers mentality shifted to make sure and adapt to the threat that we would be facing today. So pretty neat, and very an aircraft that could just really transition and keep up with the threat of the day.
My impression is, and as an airline guy now, old guy, I get to meet a lot of Air Force fighter pilots, F-15s, F-16s, and their impression was that the AIM-54 was not a very capable missile, that they could defeat it in
thinking personally.
Why did they say that?
Well, they felt like the terminal phase of the missile didn't have enough kinetics to it to guide if they decided to maneuver. My impression from my experience is that that is absolutely incorrect. That missile had a ton of kinetics, and the way that it was designed to go up, it goes up high and it comes down, and it keeps a lot of energy on the airframe of the missile itself, so that it has close in maneuverability. But we towards the end of the AIM-54, as it went away, Monty was talking about working with some other guys. We got to do some really cool shots where we were shooting it. We were employing the missile in almost like dogfight level scenarios, and we had a lot of confidence in the missile. And I can honestly say that pretty much anybody who got to shoot one, that the missiles performed well above and beyond what most people imagine. I don't know. Was that your experience, Monty?
Yeah, 100%. And that's something that while I was the AIM-54 SME on the Top Gun staff, we really worked, because the AIM-120 had some things like, hey, here's our ACM, or air combat maneuvering, no escape envelope. With a certain number of high Gs, you can't defeat it. And so we worked with the analyst, and we came up with the same thing for the AIM-54. So obviously keeping this unclassified, we shoot long range, and, at trigger squeeze or right after the missile comes off, if somebody maneuvers, okay, well, out at long range, you're not inside that. But when it's employed on the, timelines of that it had, when the Tomcat, hit sunrise or sunset, if you will, 100%, it's going to get you. And
I was super impressed with the missile. I shot two of them, and they both guided very well. And some of the missile shoots I was on, we shot four, several at the same time. I mean, I almost never saw a Phoenix fail, and it's so disappointing to me that was never really employed well in combat, unfortunately, by the United States anyway.
Yeah, and I'll give you one example of where it's just kind of tragic how it failed. Although I would say the AIM-54 did not fail.
Right.
We transitioned it. I mentioned about the F-14 transitioning, and then the AIM-54 into a short range, to medium range as well missile. I mean, it had extreme capabilities, and there was certainly two AIM-54 fired at MiG-25s out of Iraq, that 100% if they had rocket motor ignition, I think there's no way that MiG-25 escapes. Unfortunately, though that air wing was arming, not all the time, but it wasn't hey, Tomcat AOs will be the ones to arm up the AIM-54, right? And this air wing, and it happened to be, and it's nothing against the S3 community, because there was a misnomer that if you could close the little door, then that little nub was in the right place, then not blocking the door shut. And that wasn't true. You had to have a feel to it. So unfortunately, those two AIM-54s, were just tuna seekers, and just fell with no rocket motor ignition. But when you look at that profile of that MiG-25 and where it was fired, there is no way that MiG-25 escapes. But unfortunately, the AIM-54 never really got its day in the combat arena.
Well, I heard that story.
If you look at the data, from, this is obviously not super well documented, or at least maybe not 100% verifiable, but the stuff from Iran, their Phoenixes, their A's did well. And so looking at the improvements that we made, now, I just want to say, by the way, I want to say thank you. I'm a fourth decade Tomcatter. So, I didn't even fly, didn't even sit in the Tomcat. Well, other than sitting in a safe ejection seat, didn't even sit in a Tomcat until 2003. And so the timeline that I learned was very much benefited by the work you guys did on looking on that no escape stuff. So I wish we could talk in a classified level about some of the questions I had to pick your brain about it some. But the timeline we learned was 100% modified because of that kind of mindset, and it was so beneficial, beneficial.
And
thank you.
And when we had those envelopes, now when we're in the SFARP or we're debriefing, and you take bandit maneuver ranges or whatnot, And then you can determine like, hey, sorry, you were not established in the beam by this range. We shot at, therefore that's a kill. And of course, what were the adversaries thinking at first? You know, like, no, 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 there's no way I did this, so it can't get me. I'm like, no, it
Right.
is inside, you know, beam to defeat or drag to defeat.
And of course, we're shooting with MPRF too, so we had that benefit.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, so I loved being in the community in those last years because you really did see, you know, what the sum benefit of all you guys' hard work was for 30 plus years prior. And I wish we had had the time to just keep playing it out because it would have been an amazing weapon for at least another decade.
No, I think so. Absolutely. You know, when we transitioned and put the lantern pod on there, and so we had the precision weapons. We were just talking about what we did with the AIM-54, what squadrons were ready to do. Yeah, it was formidable. And unfortunately, you know, due to a couple reasons, you know, it got cut short. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Good stories. Appreciate that.
It's a strange feeling to shoot that missile. I think a lot of people, you know, you fly these simulators or DCS guys or whatever. I mean, when you drop something like a Phoenix or a 2,000-pound bomb, there is a more visceral feeling in the seat of your pants when you push that button. And when you would push the button on the Phoenix, or squeeze the trigger, depending on who was doing it, but it would be a 1 or 2 second data download to the missile. So your adrenaline was so high that when you pulled the trigger, you thought, you know, this missile's going to go boink. You know, when you pulled the trigger on a Sidewinder, it was like a bottle rocket shot off the airplane immediately.
Right.
When you pulled the trigger on a Sparrow, I think it had maybe a half-second download or something like that. But the airplane, the missile kind of went clunk pretty quickly. And the AIM-54, you know, it could take a second. So you would squeeze the trigger and you'd go, oh man, it didn't work. And then you'd feel it go clunk and the whole airplane would shake. Like,
Oh,
boom,
wow.
you know, because it's 1,000 pounds coming off the airplane. And then you wouldn't see it because it would go underneath the airplane. You can see in pictures of it being launched, you see the missile actually is under the aircraft, and it as the rocket motor lights, it takes the nose is so long on the F-14 that it would take a while before you would actually see it come out in front of the airplane. You'd be like, oh, there it goes. So I mean, there was a few seconds of anxiety, like, is this thing working? I don't know what's happening. And then when you would see it go, it was like this incredible rocket motor that, you know, the thing would accelerate, like go into warp drive and go shooting up into space. It was wild to watch it go uphill.
I don't even remember. Is it true that was the BFM shot a faster launch to eject, right?
Yeah, you would have a half-second launch to eject. You could raise the ACM guard in the front seat and then drive that half-second LTE. And so it got a little less data that it didn't really need in that scenario.
Right.
It didn't. I mean, but the long shots were a while. So, but anyways, it's cool. I mean, it was really a fun. And when you got to shoot one, you were like, that was a big deal in those days because, you know, the missile cost a couple $1 million, and a couple million in the 90s seemed like a lot more money than nowadays.
Well, that maneuver was called the MBAM, or main beam avoidance maneuver.
That's right.
Climb up and go.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, as we probably could do this all night, but I'm going to ask the same question that Lisa asked to Darrell. Any other thoughts that you wanted to share, just kind of from your long and storied career, as it were?
I was hoping to hear a war story
let's do
this
that.
was my fun flight. Tell me about you know, when you got scared, something like that, because we've all been scared.
Yeah. Well, I would say one of the things that I thought about, that we all had our where was I on 9/11, right? Kind of a big event, certainly not just for America, but for the world. And so I was on the USS Enterprise. We had deployed in early April of 2001. And on September 8th of 2001, we outchopped the Persian Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz. We were on our way home, and we were going to go around the southern tip of Africa. We were making a port visit into South Africa. We were excited, yet at the same time, what's that? Well, you know, where is that? Is this okay? And to fast or to backtrack a little bit, I always save something from when I deploy, like the Virginia pilot, right? I'd save the newspaper. I don't know what I thought I was going to do with it, but I would just grab it. And so when we deployed on April 2nd of 2001, I found my VF-14 deployment box from 2001. You know what was on the front page of the Virginia pilot in April of 2001? And it opens up long ways, right? A picture of Osama bin Laden with a title that read, "America's #1 threat. We must get him before he gets us." And
Really?
yeah, and so now to go back to September 8th, I remember trying to keep the squadron focused on Tomcats because VF-14 and VF-41, about the day after we flew off, they were going to Lemoore to transition to supers, to F-18Es and Fs.
Wow.
So we got rid of about 40% of our maintainers, 40% of our stuff, and we're on our way home, and we're off the southern coast of the Saudi Arabian Peninsula there, and 9/11 happens. And you all know that there's never a quiet moment on an aircraft carrier, right? Something's always being painted, something's always being grinded, something's always being dropped, I mean, there's nonstop noise. Well, when Captain Winnefeld, Jaws Winnefeld, who was the captain, he got on to talk to the crew, and he's like, you could hear a pin drop.
Wow.
The carrier was just smoothly gliding right through the Northern Arabian Sea. And I remember he said, he goes, "I honestly don't know what's going to be asked of us." He goes, "I'm pretty sure we're going to not be home on time." He goes, "So I've ordered the carrier to turn around and head for the coast of Pakistan." And he goes, "God bless you all, and God bless America." And then you all know that shake when the carrier starts to pick up speed.
Yeah.
And we turned around and we were ready that night, right? And we didn't start dropping
Right.
into October 6th of there. And so on the scary story, I brought, we quickly did not go after the targets that we had planned for. And I remember carrying a GNC, which is a map that is really big picture. Okay, I got North America, South America,
Right.
Europe. I'm talking big picture.
Moon's over here.
And you're
Mars is
navigating
here.
with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna do this. It's hilarious.
Well, I had that just like I said, big picture essay. And sure enough, we started getting code words and whatnot, and they were sending us up to Mazar-i Sharif to which was on the northern third of Afghanistan. It was as I opened up my map and found myself 1,200 miles away from the aircraft carrier, only about 50 to 80 miles off the border of China, wondering how as a naval aviator did I find myself here. But we started, if you've ever seen the movie 12 Strong,
That's amazing.
Supporting Task Force Dagger. And it's a tribute to what naval aviation can do and what carrier aviation can do. Because we assumed we had the limiting lantern pods, the 25K lasers. So we assumed we'd be all Kandahar and south, plus the vicinity to the Arabian Sea. But we quickly went everywhere and provided, the folks on the ground everything they needed. And so the flexibility of maintenance departments, squadrons, air crew, that's just the mentality of naval aviation.
Yeah.
And sometimes we drive ourselves into the ground, and sometimes I don't know whether we should high five ourselves or slap ourselves because we get ourselves into some binds. But the naval aviation team will make happen. And that's why when I look at things like what the Eisenhower that just got back from deployment, the Ford that just got back, what is it, the Roosevelt and the Lincoln that are over there now, what the U.S. Navy does, and specifically carrier strike groups, it's just unmatched. And they can take on, any threat and protect, us and any of our allies, and we'll figure out how to do it with the tools and toys that we have on board. Why? Because we have the right people and the right culture out there to make it happen. So,
Yep.
Tip of the spear.
yep.
Amen.
That's
great.
that is a well motivating mindset. I mean, okay, I'll sign myself up. You got me. I'm back in the cockpit. Good deal.
Hey, wait, me first.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, I'll tell you guys briefly, very briefly. I just ran across a guy here. Hopefully we'll have him on the show. The guy I went through the rag with. he is actually here. I'm in Blacksburg, Virginia. He's just showed up this last week. XO of the NROTC unit here. He's still active duty, but I went through the rag with this dude, and he's like, I wish I was still doing that. I mean, I know we all in some way or shape or form wish we were still doing that. He actually still is kind of doing it. He's still active duty. He's still wearing the oak leaf, the silver oak leaf. But yeah, I mean, it is something. It's a young man's game, right? For a young person's game.
Unfortunately,
We can't do it forever.
No, you're 100% right,
But-
and that's why I put in 3 extension packages, and why I retired at almost 33 years as an 06 and not 30. And I was in
That's awesome.
CNIC. I wasn't even in a squadron, but it was just the people you had been with. And like I said, I was blessed in VF-102 with guys like Leekster that just kind of set the tone for the next 3 decades of my career. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. And that's one of the number one things I tell the new guys at the FRSs now. I'm like, you're in the hands down best business on the planet without a close second, but always treasure it.
Yeah.
Without a close second, I love it.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Well, thank you for that. Monty, appreciate you coming on with us again. And that's really inspiring. Like you said, I'm ready to get back in and go. So
Dude, I'm pretty sure that you and I could fumble our way through a startup taxi and get airborne and then get after it.
yeah. One dark night over Bosnia and then a night trap and a cheeseburger would probably be enough to tell us we'd want to go back home.
You'd be wondering, what was I thinking? Well, you know what's funny you say that, because sometimes when I tell stories to family or friends or neighbors, and you just think about the environment we were in, and sometimes it's even hard to imagine that you were there, because it's such a unique place, right?
Yeah.
It's such a unique place with unique people, and sometimes you feel like, was I really there? Because it's just hard to.
Oh, well, you had the same feeling when you were sitting on the catapult at night about to launch off into dark nothingness. You're like, how did I get here?
Well, fortunately, it was with you. So you said, hey, shut up, new guy, and enjoy it. So I'm like, all right.
Yeah, and then you blast off, and then you're like in survival mode for 2 hours, tanking off a KC-135 in a thunderstorm, and then you run around looking for bad guys, and then you come back for your night trap, and you're like, yeah, thanks.
Come back
done.
Come back to the PIM, and it's MCON, and it's nowhere to be found, and you're like, oh,
yeah, you got to go pluck my gray hairs before I go to sleep.
yeah, sure.
Hey, but as we say, I mean, for
we
me,
laughed
I mean,
and laughed, didn't we?
That's how it's stuff. Fix that.
Sorry, Lorenzo, what's that?
Well, thank you guys. Darrell and Monty, thank you guys for being our guests today. It has been really awesome to have you with us.
Thank you guys. And I know we're a very, very small group of an unbelievable community, but I thank each and every one of you. Like I said, I'll always be grateful to have had the benefit of the experience of being in this environment that we all talked about and love, because it is precious. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it.
And it fires this community daily. You could only imagine. And again, Asuipe, thank you for your performance after 9/11 there. That was outstanding, especially to know, the cruise is kind of working its way back to America, and the ship's now doing a 180, and, you guys got it done.
I will tell you, for the benefit of the Tomcat community, so when I was the skipper of VFA-102, I brought together my JOs who were just doing such a phenomenal job, and I said, I can think of no greater compliment to give you, but I'm telling you, you guys are Tomcat guys. And
that's awesome.
At first they kind of looked at me, but then they knew exactly what I meant, because they had guys like Mort Downey, Puddles Andrews, Spicoli, Kadar, out there, and they knew exactly what that meant, even though.
I like that.
So I said, you're
like
Tomcat guys.
I like that.
Yeah, shout out to VFA-102, Diamondbacks and Naval Air Station Oceana. This is your foundation, and these people wrote the books that you guys live and die by today. And again, outstanding performance from the Diamondbacks in 2024. And Darrell, I have to say, I think you stole the show with the boning of the innocent guy in the hallway. And, the Admiral's family member there.
Yeah.
completely, accidentally
Nobody's off limits. Yeah.
being involved. That was awesome, man. Again, amazing career and your hard work. It's, again, reason why the Bones were always out there looking good and doing their job. So again, thank you for everything and thank you for your service. Also, if you guys want to listen in on podcasts, you want to catch the show, find us on YouTube at F-14 Calverton, all things Grumman. Also on Facebook at the F-14 Tomcat Radio Show. Find us on Discord at F-14 Tomcat. Also on Instagram at F-14 Tomcat. You can email us at F14Calverton@gmail.com. And let's throw a shout out. Happy birthday to Melanie tonight. And she rocks.
Mel,
Thank you.
Sink house.
Siphon's rank has been
Big
reinstated now, so it's better judgment. But
Speak Siphon House. I like it.
like I said, it'd be an amazing show, and it was. Thank you guys. You're all awesome, and you rock. Thank you again.
Thanks, Lorenzo. Thanks, team.
Thanks, guys.